Maximum Crisis is going to be released very shortly, and as a competitive player, the best thing that you can do is educate yourself on what to expect at your next event. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now today I'm bringing to you the meta analysis for May 2017. I know you guys love this video and you guys love the pie chart, and it's a really informative video to let you guys know what you can expect at your locals, your regionals, even your YCSs, because Pittsburgh at the time of recording this video is only 2 weeks away, and so having that knowledge of what to expect going into that event can give you that slight edge that you need to help you just do better overall. So a couple things I do want to just preface like I do at the beginning of every meta-analysis. This meta-analysis is solely my opinion based off of a myriad of different things, but it's pretty much based off of how I feel that the sets, especially Maximum Crisis coming out, is going to impact the meta and what decks you can expect from there. So again, this is purely subjective, so you want to, I'll just take it with a grain of salt, but it is definitely something that you're going to want to pay attention to because it is going to be partially based off of the patterns in the OCG and kind of what happened there as well. So without further ado, here's the pie chart and let's go ahead and get right into it. So it shouldn't really be a surprise that Zodiac is going to be taking up about 35 to 40% of the pie chart, and that's for good reason, because even though Rapier is at 2, Zodiac is still, without a doubt, the most consistent deck available in the current format. And whether you want to play this as a splashable engine or just the pure Zodiac deck in general, you're still going to be seeing a lot of Zodiac, and that's mainly in part, especially now, thanks to the release of Zodiac Laika, or with its new name, Chakanine, I believe it's called. Zodiac Chakanine is really important to the deck because it allows the deck to do things that it wasn't previously able to do. It turns one Rapier into 2 draws and a Daigusto Emerald and a Zodiac Trident, kind of like how the deck functioned before we had Rapier down to 2, and it just really helps extend the combos that the deck is capable of doing. We also have Zodiac Hammer Kong, while might not be as important as Chakanine, is really powerful because it prevents all your Zodiac monsters from being targeted by card effects, and that's really important considering we're in a format where there's a lot of cards that do target, and having that sort of protection on Trident or any of your other powerful Zodiac monsters can be invaluable. Now, one thing I do want to mention is with this meta analysis, there's going to be a tremendous shift for the Zodiac players going back to Kaiju Zodiac. If you guys remember back maybe about a month or two ago, Kaiju Zodiac was pretty much the favorite in terms of the US player base, in terms of the variant of Zodiac that they like to play. And that's because the Kaiju Zodiac build, when Rapier was at 3, had a 2-card OTK in Slumber and any way to access Zodiac Rapier. So, you know, if you have the ability to 2-card OTK someone, none of us are really going to complain about that because it's pretty fucking ridiculous. So the thing is, though, that's not exactly the case as to why Kaiju Zodiac is going to have a resurgence in popularity. What's going to happen is, because of the introduction of True Draco, which we're going to get into momentarily, pretty much Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, is a bitch to deal with in one way or another, but the ultimate solution is to tribute the fuck over it, and then you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. So Kaijus are the most effective way of doing that, and you know, splashing in the Kaiju engine of maybe 4 Kaijus and 2 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, that's really going to be all you need, because it's pretty much, as long as you can out the Masterpiece, you're pretty much going to be in a very advantageous position because they're going to be so far behind on advantage from that point on. And because Zodiac is so capable of generating advantage through just 1 card or even just basic 2-card combos at the deck's disposal, that's really what's going to take this deck over the top, and that's why I feel that Zodiac, more specifically Kaiju Zodiac, is going to be the deck to beat going into this format. Now, I did mention True Draco, and True Draco is the second spot, taking up about 20 to 25% of this pie chart. True Draco is phenomenal, and there's a bunch of different ways that this deck can go about. There's True Draco with the True Kings, there's True Draco Zodiac, which is more or less just a Zodiac deck that plays like 3 copies of Diagram and Masterpiece, so I would say that's more Zodiac than True Draco, but it's still a deck you need to be on the lookout for. And then there's the pure True Draco deck itself, and this is a deck that specifically specifically catered to just getting out Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, and since this card has so few outs and is such a powerful card and deterrent for so many different decks, that's why you're going to be seeing a lot of it. Now, it does suffer from some consistency issues as any Tribute Summon base deck does, but it is more consistent than the past Tribute Summon base decks we've had before, because Masterpiece can be summoned using spells or trap cards as well. I should say continuous spells and trap cards. So it's a lot easier to summon him out, and when he's out on the board, he is a threat to deal with because he's usually immune to monster effects and spell effects, and in a format where traps aren't really going to be too prevalent, which I'll get into later as well. I mean, even if you're looking at like your Paleozoic matchup, they're just going to make him immune to traps, and then Paleozoic can't do anything, so they pretty much just lose the game outright. So True Draco is definitely a deck you're going to want to familiarize yourself with in terms of how it works, in terms of what point you're going to want to disrupt their plays to pretty much prevent a True Draco Slaying King from hitting the board or just stopping their plays altogether. It's something you're really going to want to take note of. Then after that, we've got True King Dinosaurs, taking up about, I'd say, a fifth of the pie chart here, because True King Dinosaurs is so much fun, and I think a lot of you guys would agree with me on that as well. The deck is just so cool for all the different plays that it can do. Once we have Dragonic Diagram, once Maximum Crisis is legal, you're going to start seeing this deck everywhere. It's super popular in the OCG. I know they're in Link format, but even so, the deck is so explosive and so powerful with the plays that it can do. The fact that you've got so much flexibility with cards like True King of All Calamities, you can make stuff like Totally Awesome, you've got Logia, you've got Dolka, you've got Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. You've got so many different decision trees that the deck can go down that it really helps benefit and kind of can adapt to any certain type of play style. It also is really good because, I mean, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is kind of a pseudo out to Masterpiece, so that is kind of a good way to handle it. That's built into the deck, essentially. It's not like a solid out, but at least it's something compared to most other decks that most other decks don't contain, and I think that's something that really can't be overlooked. And then you look at your Zodiac matchup. It has a fairly decent Zodiac matchup. Again, True Draco Dinosaurs really does suffer from consistency issues, just like any other deck, you know, that's not Zodiac for the most part. But overall, it's still an incredibly high power, high offense deck that can really do a lot of damage, and you should really expect to see it, especially at YCS Pittsburgh. Now, for the remaining parts of the pie chart here, there's a couple decks I wanted to discuss, but you're not going to be seeing them too much, mainly because Zodiac, True Draco, and True King Dinosaur are just going to be overwhelming, you know, the entire meta. So Paleozoic's the first one I want to discuss. Even though Paleozoic was like the deck to beat last format, going into this format, it's going to be a completely different story, because now that True Draco exists and now that Masterpiece will be entering the meta, the biggest problem is that matchup, because it's almost an auto loss for the Paleozoic player, because all the True Draco player has to do is make their Masterpiece immune to trap cards, and then Paleozoic really just can't do anything. Like, it's incredibly difficult for them to out something like that. So what's going to happen is, I would say going into maybe YCS Pittsburgh, there's going to be some Paleozoic players because the deck is still incredibly strong, and that's something not to overlook. The biggest issue is, though, is that matchup. And if a lot of people are going to be playing True Draco, because usually when a really powerful deck comes out, the first big event, a lot of people are going to try it out, mainly because their opponents might be inexperienced with how the cards work, or might not be prepared for how they built their decks, so that kind of gives them an advantage and is something to really keep note of. Then I also have Lawn Mowing Infernoids in here as well. I mean, you could also, Lawn Mowing could be with Paleozoic too, but specifically 60 card Infernoid because it is an incredibly powerful deck. Again, with these other three decks here, it's going to have a very difficult time, and also not to mention with the introduction of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring into the meta, if Ash Blossom manages to hit Your Grass Looks Greener, then you're going to be in for a really rough time, and I think that's the biggest issue with Lawn Mowing Infernoid moving forward. The deck is still incredibly powerful. I really don't want to to take anything away from it, but I think with the other options in being Zodiac, True Draco, and True King Dinosaur, the deck's going to struggle to be able to keep up, but you never know. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one sneaks into a top 32 at YCS Pittsburgh. Now the other two decks, I've got Metal Foes, which mainly is like Metal Foes Zodiac more than anything. Mainly, I've talked about this before, we've got cards like Balbaboon and all these other things, but the biggest problem with Metal Foes now is that now that Unending Nightmares is going to be released from Maximum Crisis, that card is like the ultimate pendulum killer. I mean, pair Unending Nightmare with a card like Anti-Spell Fragrance, and the pendulum hate is just real. And then on top of that too, a lot of people are going to be playing a card like Cosmic Cyclone to help counteract their True Draco matchup, because they can banish the spells and trap cards, they won't trigger in the graveyard, and then they won't have tribute fodder for Masterpiece. So Cosmic Cyclone is going to start seeing a massive resurgence as well, and again, that's just another card that indirectly makes Metal Foes a much weaker matchup. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if you see one do relatively well in the next couple weeks, but it's not going to be represented at all by any means to a massive extent. And last but not least, we also have Lightsworn, Minerva, Shiranui, zombie, shenanigans, like any variant that includes Lightsworn or Minerva or anything like that. Mainly because that deck is so explosive in how many crazy plays it's capable of doing. When you throw in the Zombie engine, the Shiranui engine, and then you've got stuff like the Predaplant engine that just came out, like you can just throw 6 different engines into this deck, and it's just absolutely insane. But again, because of decks like True Draco and Masterpiece, and then Zodiacs being as consistent as they are, and True King Dinos just with the insane amounts of aggression that they really have, I really don't think you're going to be seeing these decks a lot, but again, you might see 1 or 2 here or there, so it's something that you really want to make sure you're prepared for if you're going into these high level of events. So guys, that's going to do it for the meta analysis for May. I'll probably do a revised version of this after YCS Pittsburgh, because once the results come in for that, we can kind of shift and adjust our strategies accordingly if we're going into any other events after Pittsburgh. And it's really important that we do so, because the meta is an ever-evolving beast, and you always want to be prepared. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.